Welcome to Jack Invests. Let me start with a simple but uncomfortable question. If you're earning a decent income, why does money still feel tight? Think about it for a moment. Your salary comes in. Rent or your mortgage goes out. Car payment. Credit cards. A lifestyle that doesn't feel luxurious, but somehow isn't cheap either. And by the end of the month, there's one quiet thought in your head. Where did it all go? This isn't about being bad with money. And it's not just happening to you. Across the United States and Europe, millions of working professionals are earning more than ever before, yet feeling less financially free than they expected. On paper, things look fine. A stable job, a reasonable income, no extreme spending. But emotionally, financially, something feels off. Today's video isn't a motivational talk. There are no shortcuts here. No get-rich-fast ideas. And no hustle culture. Instead, we're going to talk about something much quieter and much more dangerous. The silent fees that slowly destroy wealth. These aren't taxes. They don't show up clearly on a bank statement. And no one warns you about them. They're built into modern life. Into the way we finance cars. Into how we use credit. Into the pressure to maintain a certain lifestyle once income increases. Most people don't even realize they're paying these fees. Because everyone around them is doing the same thing. And that's the problem. By the end of this video, I want you to understand one important idea. Most people don't stay financially stuck because they earn too little. They stay stuck because too much of their future income is already quietly committed. Here on Jack Invests, we don't talk about money in an emotional or dramatic way. We talk about it calmly, logically, honestly. If you enjoy thoughtful, reality-based finance content similar in style to channels like Nick Invests or Bob Invests, you're in the right place. This channel is for students, early career earners, and working professionals who did what they were told was right, but still feel financially constrained. You don't need to feel guilty while watching this video. You don't need to feel scared. And you definitely don't need to feel rushed. Just listen. Because once you see these silent fees clearly, you can't unsee them. And awareness, quiet, unemotional awareness, is often the first real step toward financial intelligence. So get comfortable. No notes needed. Just stay with me until the end. Welcome once again to Jack Invests. Let's begin with a reality most people avoid talking about. You know what's fascinating about human behavior? We'll spend 20 minutes arguing with a barista over being charged for oat milk, but we'll watch $500,000 evaporate from our retirement account and just shrug. I watched my neighbor nearly have a breakdown last week because his gym raised their monthly fee by $3. $3. This same guy lost $42,000 in his 401k last year to fees he didn't even know existed. And when I mentioned it, he looked at me like I was speaking Mandarin. We've been conditioned to obsess over the visible costs. The Netflix price hike, the Starbucks latte, the Amazon Prime subscription. Meanwhile, there are three massive wealth-destroying fees operating in the shadows, silently compounding against you every single day. And most people will go their entire lives without ever spotting them. These aren't taxes. You can see taxes. Taxes hurt because you have to physically write a check or watch a chunk disappear from your paycheck. These fees are worse precisely because they're invisible. They're automatically deducted, never questioned, and they don't just cost you money today. They cost you decades of compounded growth. Here's what nobody tells you. By the time you notice these fees, they've already stolen more from your future than you'll probably earn in 5 years of working. Maybe 10. I'm going to show you exactly where to look, how to calculate what you're actually losing, and most importantly, how to plug these leaks before they sink your entire financial ship. Let's start with the fee that sounds the most harmless but causes the most damage. The investment fee, the expense ratio, the advisor's cut, whatever you want to call it, it's the same scam dressed up in different suits. You open your 401k statement and somewhere buried in the fine print you see a number. Maybe it's 1%, maybe it's 1.5%, and your brain does what it's been trained to do. It thinks that's basically nothing. It's just 1 penny per dollar. Wrong. Catastrophically wrong. When you buy house and pay a 1% fee, that's a one-time transaction cost. You pay it once, you move on, but investment fees aren't transactional. They're parasitic. That 1% fee isn't charged once. It's charged every single year on your entire balance. Whether the market goes up, down, or sideways, your money grows and the fee grows with it. You never escape it. It's a permanent tax on your wealth that you somehow agreed to pay. Let me show you the actual math because this is where it gets horrifying. Let's say you're 35 years old. You decide to invest $10,000 every year for the next 30 years. The market historically returns about 8% annually. Now let's run two scenarios. Scenario A, you invest in a low-cost index fund with a 0.04% expense ratio. After 30 years, you end up with roughly $1.2 million. Scenario B, you invest in an actively managed mutual fund with a 1.5% expense ratio. Or maybe you hire a financial advisor who charges 1% and puts you in funds that charge another 0.5%. Same contributions, same market returns. After 30 years, you end up with about $900,000. Read that again. Same exact investments, same amount of money contributed, same market performance, but one path leaves you with $300,000 less. That tiny 1.5% fee didn't shave 1.5% off your returns. It destroyed 25% of your wealth, a quarter of your life savings handed over to Wall Street for the privilege of them holding your money. John Bogle, the guy who invented index funds, called this the tyranny of compounding costs. Wall Street is like the house in a casino. They don't need to win big. They just need to take a small slice of every transaction over and over for decades, and by the end they own a massive chunk of the pots. Except in this casino, you're playing with your retirement, your kid's college fund, and your ability to not eat cat food when you're 75. So where do you actually find this number? Pull up your 401k statement right now. Look for something called the expense ratio. If you're in target date funds, mutual funds, or anything actively managed, you're probably paying somewhere between 0.5% and 2%. If that number is over 0.5%, you're being robbed. Switch to index funds. Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab, they all offer funds with expense ratios under 0.1%. That difference alone could be worth $500,000 over your lifetime. Now let's talk about the second silent fee. And this one is even sneakier because it doesn't feel like a fee at all. It's the cost of doing nothing. It's the inflation tax. It's what I call the melting ice cube. You've got money sitting in a checking account. Maybe it's your emergency fund. Maybe it's just cash you haven't figured out what to do with yet. The balance says $50,000. You check it next month, still $50,000. You feel safe, you feel liquid, but here's what's actually happening. That $50,000 is a block of ice sitting on your kitchen counter. The number on the scale doesn't change, but the block is shrinking. You don't see the water dripping off because inflation doesn't send you a bill. It just quietly erodes your purchasing power every single day. Let's say inflation is running at 3%. That's higher than the Fed's target of 2%, but historically common. That's considered normal and healthy. At 3% inflation, your cash loses half its value every 24 years. If you're 30 years old and you keep $50,000 in a checking account earning basically zero interest by the time you're 54, that money will only buy you what $25,000 buys today. You didn't spend it, you didn't lose it in the market, it just evaporated. But the real crime isn't inflation itself. It's the opportunity cost of holding cash in the wrong place. Right now, high-yield savings accounts are paying 4% to 5%. The stock market historically returns 8% to 10%. If you're keeping $50,000 in a checking account that pays 0.01% interest, you're volunteering to lose about $2,500 a year. That's over $200 a month you're paying for the convenience of banking with whoever you randomly picked when you were 19. That brings us to the third fee. And this one is the hardest to admit because it means looking in the mirror. It's the behavioral gap. It's the cost of being human. It's the price you pay for your own emotions. And it's staggering. There's a famous study called the Dalbar Investor Behavior Study. Every year they compare what the market actually returned versus what the average investor actually earned. The S&P 500 averages about 10% annually over long periods. You'd think investors in the S&P would get close to that, right? Wrong. The average investor earns somewhere between 6% and 7%. Where did the other 3% to 4% go? Human behavior, panic selling when the market crashes, FOMO buying when everything's already expensive, sitting on the sidelines waiting for the perfect entry point that never comes. This is the timing fee, and it's the most expensive fee of all because you can't blame Wall Street for this one. Here's how it plays out in real life. The market crashes. It's March 2020. COVID just shut down the world. The S&P 500 drops 34% in 5 weeks. Your portfolio that said $200,000 now says $132,000. You can't sleep. You're watching CNBC at 2 a.m. Every expert is screaming that this is just the beginning. Your hands are shaking as you log into your brokerage account. You click sell all of it. You move everything to cash. You tell yourself you'll buy back in when things stabilize. Fast forward 4 months. The market has not only recovered, it's hitting new all-time highs. Your $132,000 in cash is still $132,000. But if you had done absolutely nothing, if you had simply closed your laptop and gone for a walk, that money would be worth $210,000. By trying to protect yourself, you locked in a $78,000 loss that didn't need to exist. That is the timing fee. You just paid nearly 80 grand for the privilege of feeling like you were doing something And here's the thing that really stinks. That same person who panicked sold their entire portfolio in March was probably the same person who got excited and bought a bunch of tech stocks in November 2021 when everything was at peak valuations. Buy high, sell low. The exact opposite of what you're supposed to do. The market doesn't charge you for this mistake. There's no line item on your statement that says emotional decision fee $78,000. It just happens silently in the background while you convince yourself you made the smart move. Now, I'm not saying you're stupid for feeling this way. This is hardwired into your brain. Loss aversion is real. Studies show that the pain of losing $100 is roughly twice as intense as the pleasure of gaining $100. Your brain is literally designed to panic and run when numbers go down. But evolution didn't prepare you for index funds. Your fight-or-flight response was built for tigers, not bear markets. The solution here isn't to become an emotionless robot. It's to remove the temptation entirely. This is where automation becomes your greatest weapon. You set up automatic investments that happen whether you're paying attention or not, whether you're scared or greedy, whether the market is up or down. The money leaves your paycheck before you even see it. You can't panic sell what you don't manually buy. You can't time what you've already automated. The boring investors, the ones who set it and forget it, pay zero timing fees. They sleep through the crashes because they never check their accounts. They're not smarter than you. They're just less involved. And in investing, being less involved is often the smartest move you can make. But let's zoom out for a second because I want to show you what these three fees look like when they gang up on you over a lifetime. Let's run the full horror simulation. Meet two versions of yourself. Both of you are 25 years old. Both of you make the same salary and invest the same amount every year for the next 40 years. $500 a month, $6,000 a year. Version A does everything wrong, keeps money in a checking account earning nothing. Invest in high-fee mutual funds with a 1.5% expense ratio. Panics during downturns and sits out for months at a time, creating a behavioral gap that costs them 2% annually. Their effective return after all fees and mistakes is about 5% per year. Version B does everything right. Keeps only 3 months of expenses in checking, the rest in a high-yield savings account. Invests in low-cost index funds with a 0.4% expense ratio, automates everything and never touches it, capturing the full market return of roughly 10% per year. At age 65, version A has about $800,000. Not bad, right? They saved consistently for 4 decades. They should feel proud. Version B has $3.2 million. Same salary, same contribution amount. The only difference is they stopped paying silent fees. That gap, that $2.44 million difference, is the cumulative cost of financial friction. That's what you're actually paying when you ignore expense ratios, let cash rot in checking accounts, and try to time the market. Version A didn't lose $2.4 million in a scam or bad investment. They lost it to a death by 1,000 cuts, each one too small to notice in the moment but catastrophic when compounded over decades. And I know what you're thinking. Nick, this sounds great in theory, but I don't have 40 years. I'm already 35 or 45 or 55. I'm behind. The good news is that plugging these leaks works at any age. If you're 45 with $100,000 saved and you cut your fees from 1.5% to 0.1%, automate your contributions and stop trying to outsmart the market, you could still add an extra $200,000 to your retirement by age 65. That's real money. That's the difference between retiring comfortably and working part-time at 70 because you have to. So here's your wealth leak audit. This is the actual work. First, check your expense ratios. Log into your 401k or IRA right now. Find the funds you're invested in. Google the ticker symbol plus the words expense ratio. If you see anything above 0.5%, you're being bled. Move that money into a low-cost index fund. Vanguard Total Stock Market, Fidelity 500 Index. Pick one. They're all basically the same and they all cost almost nothing. Second, move your cash. If you've got more than 3 to 6 months of expenses sitting in a checking account earning 0.01%, you're volunteering for poverty. Open a high-yield savings account with any online bank offering 4% or more. It takes 10 minutes. That one move could put an extra $2,000 a year in your pocket without any additional risk. Third, automate everything. Set up automatic transfers from your paycheck to your investment accounts. Make it impossible to forget, impossible to procrastinate, and impossible to panic. Your future self will thank you when the next crash comes and you didn't even notice because you were too busy living your life. The brutal truth is this: wealth isn't just about how much you earn, it's about how much you keep. You can make $200,000 a year and retire broke if you're paying 2% in fees, losing 3% to inflation and giving up another 3% trying to time the market. Or you can make $60,000 a year and retire a millionaire if you plug the leaks. Most people spend their entire lives optimizing the wrong variable. They obsess over cutting the $15 subscription they forgot about while hemorrhaging thousands in fees they don't even know exist. It's the financial equivalent of rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic while ignoring the iceberg-sized hole below the waterline. So let's talk about the third silent fee, the one that's probably costing you more than the other two combined. And the worst part, you're doing it to yourself. This is the behavioral gap, and it's a tax you pay for having emotions. According to a famous study by Dalbar, a financial research firm, the S&P 500 has returned about 10% annually over the past 30 years. Sounds great, right? That's the market return. But here's the problem. The average investor during that same period only made about 6 to 7%. Same market, same time frame. 4 percentage points just evaporated. Where did that money go? It didn't go to Wall Street. It didn't go to inflation. It went to panic, to fear, to greed, to the voice in your head that says, this time is different. I should get out before it gets worse. That gap, that difference between what the market returned and what you actually captured, is what researchers call the behavioral gap. It's the price you pay for trying to be smart when you should be staying still. Let me show you how this plays out in real dollars, because the math is absolutely savage. Imagine two investors, both have $100,000 to invest. Both are investing for 20 years. Investor A puts their money into an S&P 500 index fund on January 1st and never touches it. They capture the full 10% average return. After 20 years, they have $673,000. Investor B is clever. They read the news. They watch CNBC. They have opinions about interest rates and the Fed and whether we're heading into a recession. They get nervous during downturns and pull their money out. They get excited during rallies and jump back in. They missed just the 10 best days in the market over those 20 years because they were sitting in cash waiting for the perfect moment to buy back in. Their return drops to 6%. After 20 years, they have $321,000. Same starting amount, same time horizon. Investor B has half the money. That's not a rounding error. That's not bad luck. That's a $352,000 fee for having human emotions. And it gets darker. What if you're not just trying to time the market, but you're sitting on the sidelines entirely waiting for the crash? Let's say it's 2021. The market feels too high. Everyone is talking about bubbles. You decide to wait. You'll invest when it drops 20%. Smart, right? Except the market goes up another 25% in 2021. Then it crashes 18% in 2022. Perfect. You buy the dip. You feel like a genius. But even buying the dip perfectly, you're still 5% behind where you would have been if you'd just invested in 2021 and ignored the noise. You outsmarted yourself. This is the timing fee, and it's completely self-inflicted. Every day you sit in cash waiting for certainty, you're paying it. Every time you sell because things feel scary, you're paying it. Every time you buy because everyone else is buying and you don't want to miss out, you're paying it. Warren Buffett has a quote that destroys this entire mentality. He said, "The stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient." You are not competing against Wall Street. You're competing against your own impulse to do something. The only way to eliminate the behavioral gap is to remove yourself from the equation entirely. Automate your investments. Set it and forget it. Make it so boring that you can't screw it up even if you tried. Because the second you give yourself the option to make a decision based on how you feel, you've introduced a leak that will cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. So let's bring this full circle. You are fighting a war on three fronts, and most people don't even know the battle is happening. Wall Street is charging you fees that sound tiny but compound into fortunes. Inflation is silently eroding your cash while you think it's safe. And your own brain is sabotaging you every time you try to be clever. The good news is that once you see these leaks, plugging them is shockingly simple. You don't need a finance degree. You don't need to pick stocks. You don't need to time the market. You just need to stop volunteering to lose. Here's your action plan right now today. Log into your 401k or IRA. Find your expense ratios. If any fund is charging more than 0.5%, move it to a low-cost index fund. Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab, they all offer funds with expense ratios under 0.1%. Make the switch. That one decision could be worth $200,000 by the time you retire. Second, look at your cash. If you've got more than 6 months of expenses sitting in a checking account, earning nothing, move it. High-yield savings accounts are paying 4 to 5% right now. That's not an investment. That's just using a better bank. If you have $30,000 sitting there, that's an extra $1,200 a year for doing absolutely nothing except clicking a few buttons. Third, automate everything. Set up automatic contributions from your paycheck straight into your investment account. Make it impossible to forget, impossible to procrastinate, and impossible to panic sell when the market drops. Your emotions are not your friend when it comes to investing. Treat them like a toddler with a credit card. Don't let them make decisions. Wealth is not about how much you earn, it's about how much you keep. You can make $300,000 a year and retire broke if you're paying 2% in fees, losing 3% to inflation, and giving up another 4% trying to outsmart the market. Or you can make $70,000 a year and retire a millionaire if you plug the leaks and let compounding do the work. most people will never do. They'll keep chasing returns, switching funds, checking their accounts daily, and wondering why they're always behind. But you're not most people. You watch this video, you see the leaks. Now the only question is whether you'll actually plug them. The difference between dying rich and dying broke isn't usually one catastrophic mistake. It's 1,000 tiny decisions you never questioned because they felt normal. Paying 1.2% in fees because that's what your 401k offers. Keeping cash in. Checking because switching banks sounds annoying. Selling in a panic because watching your account drop 20% made your stomach hurt. None of these feel like life-altering choices in the moment, but compound them over 40 years, and they're the difference between financial independence and working until you physically can't anymore. The irony is brutal. We live in an era with more financial information available than ever before. You can learn everything I just told you for free on a Saturday afternoon. The tools to plug these leaks: index funds, high-yield savings accounts, automatic transfers, they're all sitting there waiting for you to use them. And yet most people won't. They'll keep doing what they've always done because changing feels harder than staying the course, even when the course leads off a cliff. But here's what keeps me making these videos. Every so often, someone actually listens. They check their expense ratios and realize they've been paying 1.4% 4% for a fund that does worse than the market. They move their emergency fund and watch an extra $100 show up every month for literally zero effort. They automate their investments and stop checking their account every time the market hiccups. And 5 years later, 10 years later, they look back and realize that one boring afternoon of administrative work was worth more than every overtime shift they ever worked. You can't control the market. You can't control inflation, but you can control whether you volunteer to lose. Stop paying fees you don't have to pay. Stop letting cash melt. Stop trying to be clever when boring wins. The money you save won't feel dramatic today, but 30 years from now, when everyone else is wondering where it all went, you'll know exactly where yours went. It stayed with you.